Please remember, none of this is financial advice, and I have a bias towards the XX network. There is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
The way legislation comes together tends to be in response to a particular crisis or event.
Crisis is an opportunity. Water out of chaos. Crypto will be no different.
And, I put together legislation that I think, again, lays, broad guardrails, creates certainty, that type of thing. But you will find very often that Congress reacts as opposed to thinking in a forward manner.
Binance is a major hub of liquidity. If Binance gets taken out of the crypto economy, that's going to cause chaos and price mismatches.
Would be included in both of those pathways. So interesting that there's a pretty good bill over in the Senate, and we have a bill that is being improved as we speak that has been voted through House Financial Services. So I, in my discussions, get the sense that the Fed does want a deal. The White House wants a deal. The Treasury wants a deal. Now, we all just have to kind of put it together with the specific language and
Behind closed doors, behind the scenes, people know what's going on. As a matter of fact, if you're watching this channel, you've heard Don Fitzpatrick, one of the heads from the Soros Fund, outright tell you that the incumbents are scooping up infrastructure on the sidelines as it becomes cheap.
That is what's going to happen on kind of
Wouldn't that be ironic, though, given the disruption that crypto promised?
Yeah, there is some irony to it, and I'm sure, yeah, it is ironic, but I think that is going to be the evolution.
The same will happen when Binance and Tether are washed out of the markets. They'll use that as an excuse to pick up cheap assets. This is how the whales work.
Yeah, I think the Fed's record on these things is wonderful. It's almost guaranteed to be wrong. They have never called a recession, and particularly not the ones following the great bubbles. They prided themselves in stimulating the bubbles. They took credit for the beneficial effect of higher asset prices on the economy. They have never claimed credit for the deflationary effect of asset prices breaking, and they always do.
There's never been a soft landing. The economy is a natural, living, breathing organism, and the government, paired with the central bank, have come in and just tried to eradicate winters. You have to have winters. There can not just be springs and summer times, yet that's what the central bank has done, is they've eradicated winter. Well, winter is here, and the market doesn't realize it. The bond market realizes it, and it's selling off debt. But the stock market keeps climbing higher and higher. You pair this with the fundamental problems in crypto, such as Binance being charged by the Department of Justice as fraud, or the problems with Tether, what's going to happen in the crypto world?
Absolutely. Well, that is a totally appropriate and normal action that the Department of Justice would take when evaluating whether to bring criminal charges against the corporation. In other contexts, they look at the harm to shareholders. I think by analogy here, you'd say, what are the harm to people that are using the Binance platforms to trade? And I think it is of significant note that, I checked this morning, Binance is 7 times the size of Coinbase in daily volume. It is by far the largest exchange in the world by any measure. And it is well known that U.S. individuals do use that platform and not just Binance US. So they do have to consider these things in assessing whether to criminally charge a company, because that is usually what we call the death blow. And that's not a legal term. That's just well understood that criminal charges are often fatal to a company and has severe consequences for all stakeholders.
Pay close attention to Binance, particularly the BNB token. If they were cooking their books, there's no support. The token goes straight down. It's going to fall like a stone. But besides that, You're going to wake up one day and you're going to see the Department of Justice has frozen this domain. What's going to happen is the exchange, as well as all the assets, are going to get reallocated to the U.S. companies that the state favors. They're going to sell and auction off the assets to places like Coinbase or Ripple or whatever, and they're going to just freeze and reabsorb all the assets. Or they're going to cut a plea deal with CZ, and somebody's going to get in trouble, and they're going to redo the whole entire thing. What's more likely to me is they're just going to freeze Binance and auction off the assets to the highest bidder.
Failed. That we had Dr. Omarova. You may remember she was the failed candidate for the comptroller of the currency. She was on Bloomberg saying that we should go to a central bank digital currency. I think looking for a crisis to then try to advocate for something that would be very concerning to me.
There are people pushing for central bank digital currencies. There's people pushing for stable coins, but I argue it doesn't matter. You'll have the same results because the government is in bed with the big tech. It's in bed with the big organization. So it takes a subpoena to get the information. So what does it matter if it's a stable coin provider or a central bank digital currency? The threatening trend seems to be the sovereign debt crisis. Debt keeps piling off, and right now it's selling off and nobody's paying attention to it. Stocks remain high, real estate remains high, used cars remain high, but the debt is telling you everything. It's selling off, therefore the interest rates are getting higher and higher. Sooner then later, it's going to cripple the economy. I talk to people in all different types of industries, and they're all telling me the same thing, that they can't get financing. Good companies can't get the loans in time, so they have to go under. They're laying people off. More and more people are losing their jobs. This is all going to add up, and it's all going to add up quick.
And we would never, ever get into sectoral investments. The IMF has very strong macro policy expertise. So what we bring is how you can use fiscal policies to advance the transition to digital economy, how you can use monetary policy to assess the new types of risks, including from crypto, from climate, and how you can use data to cover what matters to policymakers today and in the future. And we bring these skills with the bank in a very impactful manner. And let me say this, the world...
They can use fiscal policy to usher in the digital economy. So they can use the government to issue out CBDCs when there's an emergency or there's welfare, whatever the reason for it. They can use this to usher central bank digital currencies or stable coins for that matter.
So what we bring is how you can use fiscal policies to advance the transition to digital economy.
Climate and crypto. That's what she's focused on. That's what she's saying is going to pop this bubble. It's already popped. They've already popped the bubble. This is the scapegoats. These are the scapegoats they're going to blame it on. Binance, climate. Those are the new problems. The climate crisis and the crypto crisis are going to take down the global financial system. So they need a whole bunch of rules for climate and crypto. When they fix climate and crypto, that will fix the economy. That's the logic behind this. She knows what's happening. She understands. She's an influential person that talks to influential people with lots of money. She knows what's happening, and that's what they're doing, climate and crypto.
So what we bring is how you can use fiscal policies to advance the transition to digital economy, how you can use monetary policy to assess the new types of risks, including from crypto, from climate, and how you can use data to cover what matters to policymakers today and in the future. And we bring these skills with the bank in a very impactful manner. And let me say this,
The central banks are after real-time data. Like I keep mentioning, the economy is this natural, living, breathing thing. Well, the central banks want real-time data so they can react to any problem that comes up as it arises. Right now, they're using lagging indicators like CPI. This stuff takes months and months to come out before they actually have a picture of everything. With real-time data, they'll have a picture of everything in real time and can react with real time. It's the idea of something natural merging with something mechanical, right? AI being introduced into something natural, which is the economy. It's a very familiar theme.
Able to regulate to get. We've ditched competition and market forces in exchange for these stricter top-down regulations, with much of it ceded by Congress to the regulatory agencies. The tragic part is that this approach has repeatedly failed. It's for decades and decades. But every time something goes really wrong, every time we have a crisis, we double down on that same approach. We impose more prescriptive rules, create more boxes to check, expand government backing, and we make more promises along the lines of this time the regulators will keep us safe. But they never do.
There is a tremendous amount of stress on the market because of higher and higher interest rates. Money is not moving. Whales are not making investments. They're not giving money out as they used to. Everybody is very tight with their money. This is causing problems. Money needs to circulate through the economy. Well, right now, the crypto world is going through a part where nobody's moving money around. So Tether, Binance, everybody that's issued fake assets, and then they come home and those people want real money for the fake assets that Binance or Tether issued. That's where the catastrophe happens. That's where the bank run happens. That's where everybody wants their money all at once and the Ponzi implodes. That's the setup right now. And there's going to be an emergency to clear all this up.
And access to US dollars, which is something that we want to promote right now. Senator Haggerty spoke very eloquently about the threats to the dollar. We have the BRICS countries, putting together a consortium to try to bypass SWIFT. We have China doing its digital yuan. These initiatives are direct threats to the dollar at a time when it's already a smaller percentage of foreign exchange reserves than it was in 2015. In 2015, it was 66% of Forex. Today, it's 57% before all of these very concentrated efforts. So we think that putting dollars on the internet that are backed by really good assets, that are US denominated assets, is a way to sort of promote the dollar.
The Cato Institute is a think tank. Think tanks figure out the policy and deliver it to Congress. The people that are actually writing the laws are not the people that are passing the laws. The think tanks are largely responsible for this. I listened to the entire Cato Institute seminar. This entire thing is about getting stable coins pushed forward. It's about getting crypto regulations back in the hands of the United States. And it's going to happen. They also talk about the threats of Tether. They talk about the threats of Binance. This is all going to be absorbed back into the United States. They do not want foreign countries to create policies for the US dollar. And that's essentially what's happening.
Inflating the US dollar. So like other countries are writing the rules for the dollar. That is unacceptable. And that's why I think actually, Julie, that the Fed does want a deal, because they don't like to see that. And some things that have come out from them have been a bit disappointing. But the Fed is not a monolith. And Jay Powell has testified before Congress that he sees stablecoins as a new form of money, which is why hope springs eternal with me. But I think Zai is also right. Like, my mom always told me, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think we're falling into that trap a bit right now while the rest of the world moves on. But what I will note is that if we do nothing in the next 4 or 5 months and we're in election season in 2024, we may not get legislation for 2 years or, God knows how long. During that period of time, we'll not only have Japan writing the rules for stablecoins, which they've already done, and the EU writing those rules, but the UAE potentially, Singapore and Hong Kong will almost certainly do it in early 2024. And you could end up with Tether being a $250 billion financial institution. Maybe they'll add 20 people. It'll be 80 people running $250 billion. That is not a position the United States should be in.
It would be ridiculous to have the rest of the world dictate US dollar policy. And that's essentially what's happening. So do you really think that that's going to continue to happen? Or do you think the US has something in mind? Something to bring all this onshore, to bring all this home, to dictate policy? I think they do. So Swan Bitcoin, which the guy's a Bitcoin maxi, very critical of XRP. This guy has his Bitcoin, the entire exchange's Bitcoin, on Fortress. Fortress, it turns out, was hacked. There was an integration with BitGo as well as Fireblocks, and somebody exploited a hot wallet that had Swan Bitcoin's Bitcoin on it. Ripple has made everybody whole, so they really saved the day from another exchange collapsing. So they just win this lawsuit. They start buying up things like Medico, Fortress. They start making moves. This is infrastructure. This is critical infrastructure on how this technology is going to progress. So when Don Fitzpatrick says that the incumbents are swooping in and buying up the infrastructure, well, Ripple is one of those incumbents at this point.
Paulson would be told the markets were crashing.
The stock market dropped by hundreds of points right from the open.
Lehman Brothers had been far more interconnected than Paulson believed. Systemic risk became a reality.
No bank wants to lend to any other bank because they're afraid that the other bank won't be able to pay them back, even though this interbank lending is at the very, very heart of the banking system, of the worldwide banking system.
The same scenario is happening right now. Silicon Valley Bank imploded. The government absorbed it. So the government's absorbing banks' balance sheets. If this continues, the government's balance sheet's just going to expand. But it's also happening in the crypto world, which is really interesting because the crypto world will not have governments intervening. It's the truest form of free markets. Who's intervening? Ripple is acting as the lender of last resort. Really interesting. The only approval I really need is my own.